Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Durch Adams Fall ist ganz verderbt, which translates to, through Adam's fall, human nature and character is completely corrupted. That's the complete line of the verse, but the literal title is, through Adam's fall, human nature. This is a pretty interesting chorale as far as the key structure is concerned. Other than that, really, the harmony is pretty straightforward, so we should probably just get right into the analysis. So 2 flats in the key signature. We start on G major and we end on G major. But if we look at our first cadence, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor. So I think actually we start in the key of C minor, which is unusual to start in a key other than the tonic key. So we start with the G major triad in first inversion, that's 5-6, it's our dominant. Then we have C, C, E flat, and G, that's our tonic triad in root position. Passing tone in the bass, we get E flat, C, E flat, and G. That's still our tonic triad, but this time it's in first inversion. We get F, C, E flat, and F, A flat, C, E flat, and F. That's an F minor triad, or an F minor 7 chord in first inversion, so that would be 4-6-5, going to B natural, G, D, and G. Notice how we have, oh actually, just kidding, this is A natural. I was about to comment on the fact that it is an augmented second, but no, this is A natural, because even though we're in the key of C minor, we only have 2 flats in the key signature, so technically we're thinking in terms of melodic minor here, and then we get B natural in the bass, which is a G major chord in first inversion. So 4-6-5 going to 5-6 is a progression we see quite often in Bach's music when we see a harmonization of the melodic minor scale. We then get C, G, D, and E flat, but this D is an accented non-chord tone. We're looking at this C instead. It's our tonic triad in root position. We get G, G, C, and D in the same way that the C is an accented non-chord tone. The resolution of the chord doesn't happen until this and. So because we get this F here as well, I'm going to go ahead and call this 5-7 rather than 5 and make this a chord tone as well, because it does happen with the resolution of the chord. And then of course we cadence on 1, our tonic triad with the tonic in the melody as well. That makes it perfect authentic. If we move ahead to the end of the next phrase, we have another perfect authentic cadence, but this time it's in the key of G minor. So this C minor chord that is a rotation of the upper 3 voices on the next beat, I think that's turning into 4 in the key of G minor, and we've already modulated. The A naturals are consistent. We have B flats in the melody as well. I'm hearing this in the realm of 2 flats rather than 3 flats. So we have G, B flat, D, and B flat. That's a tonic triad in root position, passing 7th in the bass, passing tone in the tenor. We then get E flat, G, C, and C. That's another C minor triad, but this time it's in first inversion, passing tone in the bass and the alto. We then have C, C, E flat, and G. So even though we're in the key of G minor, we're still getting a lot of C minor instead. And because we're following this C minor first inversion triad with a C minor root position, no need to reiterate the Roman numeral, just change the figured bass, passing 7th in the bass as well. We then have A flat, C, E flat, and A. That's an A diminished triad in root position, so we'll call that 2 diminished, actually not a diameter symbol but a degree symbol, because triads can't be half diminished. We then have a non-chord tone here in the bass, so it's a 7th. It then leaps up to D, F sharp, D, and B. However, this F sharp and the D in the bass are all kind of alluding to 5. But technically this F sharp is an accented non-chord tone, and we're actually getting 1-6-4 here before we get 5 on the next beat, right? Because we get the F sharp here, the C sharp, and the A. We actually get 5-7, so we could analyze it this way with the bracket underneath, and then we cadence on 1. Interesting for us to end the phrase with a perfect authentic cadence, including the Picardy third, because the phrase picks up again with another G major triad. So it looks like this G major triad could function as the dominant in the key of C minor again, but because we get the pickup at the beginning of the repeat, it's like we get two G major chords next to one another, and they both function the same way, so that's kind of interesting. Okay, next we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of E flat major, and this G minor chord is going to be our pivot chord. We're going to call it 3, and I was kind of hesitant because 3 is not the strongest chord to pivot from, but regardless, he does it one more time in the chorale as well, which makes me feel better about analyzing it this way. Next chord we get is B flat, F, and B flat. Apologies, there's a D in the bass, D, B flat, F, and B flat with some passing tones in the bass and the alto. This is a B flat major chord over D natural, that's 5-6. 3 going to 5 is not the most common, but because 3 is a substitute for 1, it's not super unusual. Then we get B flat, F, D, and B flat with some passing tones in the upper voices. That's another B flat major triad. This time it's in root position though, so we'll just change the figured bass. We then get E flat, G, B flat, and G, which is our tonic triad, E flat major. Passing tones in the outer voices this time. Let's see, we have D, G, B flat, and F. Kind of a passing 3-7 chord there, but that really doesn't contribute much to the progression. We have C, G, C, and E flat. That's a C minor triad in root position, which is 6 in the key of E flat major. And then we have some passing tones going on here. We have A flat, we have D, and we have F. That would be a D half diminished, or D minor 7 flat 5 in second inversion, or just a passing 7 chord with the C pedal in the bass, depending on how you look at this. I'm going to call it 7-4-2 because we do keep the C in the bass, and it is analyzable using those terms. So we have 6 going to 7. We would expect that to go to 1. G, B flat, E flat, and G. A little bit of a deceptive progression there because we would expect... actually, no, this goes where we would expect it to. 7-4-2 probably would go to 1 in first inversion, wouldn't it? Maybe, maybe not, but either way, it still does go to a 1 chord. It's also uppercase because we're in a major key. Passing tone in the bass. We then have B flat, D, and F. That's our dominant B flat major triad with a delayed 7th on beat 2 and, before we cadence again on E flat, with the E flat in the melody as well, so it's perfect authentic. Okay, then we have another perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor again. So we're going to call this E flat chord that we get here another 3 chord. So this is the second time that we're using 3 to get to the next key, so I feel like there is some significance in that. We then have a C chord there, C, E flat, G, and G. So there's a little bit of 1 going on here, but like I said, it's really not contributing too much because similarly to the phrase in E flat major, if we don't take into account that passing tone in the alto, we have B, G, D, and G, which is 5-6 in the key of C minor, 3 going to 5, 3 going to 5. Even more specifically, 3 going to 5-6, 3 going to 5-6. So I think that there's some significance there. Passing tone in the tenor. We then have C, E flat, C, and G. So instead of prolonging the dominant over 2 beats like he does in the E flat phrase, we get the tonic immediately afterwards, and that's okay. We have a passing 7th in the bass. We have A flat, F, C, and F. That is an F minor triad in first inversion, so that would be 4-6. Then we have G, G, C, and F. That doesn't really contribute anything. It's not an analyzable triad or analyzable tertian chord. We have F, A flat, C, and E, with a little bit of an anticipation going on here, I guess depending on how you look at it. This is a F minor 7 chord in root position, so we don't need to change the Roman numeral, we just need to analyze it with a change in figure bass. So it's a root position triad with a 7th on top, 7-5-3. But if you hear this, but with this D here, we have D, F, A flat, and C. It's kind of a 2 chord, or a 2/7, a little bit of a passing 2/7 chord, which doesn't really actually contribute all that much. Here we have G, G, C, and D. The C is a accented chord tone over the non-chord tone, an accented chord tone. What does that even mean? Accented non-chord tone over the bass. It's actually a 4/3 suspension. C is a 4th over the G, which is in our bass, and then it resolves down to B natural. So this is just a 5 chord in root position with a delayed 7th, and then we cadence on 1. 4 perfect authentic cadences, which is interesting. Moving ahead to the next phrase, we have I think this is the most interesting phrase that we have so far. I was tempted to call it a perfect authentic cadence in the key of F, but I think it's actually a half cadence in the key of B flat. Even though we get this, we haven't modulated by this point. Even though we get E natural here, whenever you hear some sort of secondary dominant action in a cadence or in a cadential situation, especially involving the dominant, it really makes analysis tricky. It's like half cadences are really a spectrum. They're not always completely discernible as half cadences or perfect authentic cadences. They just kind of operate on their own wavelength, and they have elements of both. But I hear this as a half cadence because it seems like he's descending a fragment of the B flat major scale from 1 to 5 rather than an F major going from 4 to 1. So that's just what it sounds like to me. But for now, we're still in the key of C minor. We have B flat, G, D, and G. He really likes this voicing, as we've seen it many times in the chorale so far. This is G major over B, which is 5/6. Then we have C minor in root position, C, C, E flat, and G. So 5 going to 1, passing 7th in the bass. We then have A flat, so F, A flat, E flat, and F. That is an incomplete F minor 7 chord, but we'll just call that 4/7. Yeah. A little neighbor tone here. Might hear this as a 2/6 chord, depending on how you hear it. But all in all, they both function the same way as either predominant or, mid-progressional chords. We have E flat, B flat, E flat, and G. That's an E flat major chord, and in the key of C minor, that's a 3 chord. 4 going to 3 is an unusual progression. That's something that's kind of interesting and kind of difficult for me to come to terms with, as from an analytical perspective, it's not usual. 4 could go back to 1, and 3 is a sub for 1 because they're both tonic functioning chords. But 4 is usually pointing in the direction of the dominant. Passing tone in the bass. And then we have, this is a chord tone here, so because Bach skips up a third. Then we have C, C, F, and A. This is an interesting chord. It's part of a passing progression, so the fact that we get an A natural in the melody is very interesting. So we have 3 going to 4, 6, 4, and it's uppercase, the same way that we saw this uppercase 4 chord here. But this time it's in second inversion, and we get the E flat, the passing E flat here as well. But yeah, we get B flat. So I think this is where we modulate to the key of B flat, because this F major triad is our dominant. Even though it's in second inversion, it's more so just a byproduct of the fact that we just have this descending bass line down from F to B flat, then up to C, down to F. What also kind of confuses this as a half cadence is the fact that we have 4, 5, 1 in the key of F, even though I'm choosing to analyze this in the key of B flat. I'll offer some F major analysis as well as sort of a to add a second side to this. So we have B flat, F, D, and B flat. That is our tonic, which is where F wants to go to. That's good. Some passing tones in the upper voices. We have C, B flat, and G. This is a 5/7 of 5. We're waiting for this E to resolve here. This F is in a 4/3 suspension over the bass. And then, of course, we go to 5. There are a couple of things that make this half cadence not sound like a half cadence. One, like I mentioned, is the bass movement, the fact that we use E natural, and also because half cadences usually don't have the tonic in the melody. Even though they sometimes do, most of the time they have the 5th of the chord in the melody. So if this were really a half cadence or sounding as half cadential as possible, we would expect to see in the melody, but we don't, and that's definitely not something that's required of it. It's just something that contributes to the sound. But if we did say, for example, we analyzed in the key of F, we can call this F major chord 164. We could even call it 564 of 4, because we would be going to B flat, and because we have this E flat here, it kind of changes the quality of the chord as well. If this were an E natural, it'd be a different story. But we then go to 4 in root position, and then we go to 5-7, and then we cadence on 1. So either way, we have two analyses that kind of, neither of them are perfect. I would say the B flat looks a little bit better than the F, just because of the E flat still being present here after the tonic triad. It kind of weakens the cadence, or sorry, it weakens the introduction of the key. But all in all, it's somewhere in between F and B flat. It's one of the two. I'm going to stick with B flat though. Okay, we then have an F major triad here on this beat. So that's our tonic chord. Or sorry, not our tonic chord, we're in B flat, so this is just another 5 chord. And then we get B flat, F, and D. I reckon we're going to modulate at some point, so we can call this 4 in root position with the passing 7th and the tenor, and we can say that we've modulated at this point back to the key of G minor, and we can call it 3, again with another 3 chord as our pivot chord, which has been consistent across 3 of our phrases so far. And the reason why I'm looking to modulate at this point, or to analyze the modulation around this point, is because of the fact that we have F sharps happening on the next beat, or more specifically the and of the next beat. So here we have B flat going to, which is a 3 chord, we have C, G, E flat, and C, that's a root position, C minor triad, which is our subdominant 4, we then have D, F sharp, D, and C, we have a very brief moment of 5-7, D major, or D7 is our dominant 7 chord in the key of G minor. We then have E flat, G, C, and G. We have a little bit of a deceptive progression here. It goes to C minor in first inversion, but this is not unheard of, 5 going to 4-6. It's just a little deceptive. Passing tone in the melody. We then have B flat, G, D, and B flat. That is our tonic triad in first inversion, so G minor over B flat. Passing tone in the bass. We then have D, F sharp, D, and A, which is our dominant in root position, which is 5. Passing 7th in the alto. E flat, G, B flat, and G, another deceptive progression, kind of prolonging this cadence. It's a 6 chord in the key of G minor. Passing tone in the bass. We have C, G, E flat, and A. You know, Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. That's A minor 7 flat 5 over C. So 2-6-5 or 2 half diminished 6-5. We then have D. What clef is that? G and D, F sharp, D, and A with a passing 7th in the alto. That's just a 5 chord. We have pretty much as archetypal of a perfect authentic cadence as possible. And as Bach does often with his minor chorales, he cadences on a major version of the tonic triad with the Picardy third. So other than this analysis here, I'm pretty convinced that the chorales, functioning more or less in a harmonic fashion, like a functionally harmonic fashion. All the chords go where they're supposed to. Everything's pretty straightforward. I think it's interesting that 3 was the pivot chord in a couple of different places, or 3 different places, so more than a couple. At first, it was kind of an interesting analysis. I'm like, is this the best place to mark the modulation? Really, there isn't as large a window to mark it. Like here, I guess I could have called this F major chord 7, but I guess 7 does want to go to 3. But saying that the analysis I think looks better when we have consistency across the modulations. It very seldom happens that way, but it's cool when it does. But I'll leave you all on that one. This was a pretty straightforward chorale. This is the first time we've seen this melody harmonized. I think Bach only harmonizes this melody twice across all of his cantatas and vocal works, so I can't speak to his instrumental repertoire, but this melody gets seen in 2 different chorales, so we'll see it down the road when we get to it. Again, many episodes from now. But thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you for continuing to support the channel. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.